On January 31st, 2025, after spending nearly 23 years on death row, Marion Bowman Jr. was executed by lethal injection in South Carolina. In this video, we'll uncover what happened, his last meal, and his last words. It was just after 7:50 p.m. on February 16, 2001, a cold, still night in rural Dorchester County. A man was driving along Nursery Road, headlights sweeping over the edge of woods, when something caught his eye, a small four-door blue sedan parked oddly close to the tree line. The car had no lights on, and the windows were cracked open. It looked abandoned, but not like it had broken down, more like it had been left there in a hurry. The driver paused for a second, then moved on. He didn't see anyone nearby, and he didn't stop to check. A few minutes later, and a few houses down, a neighbor sat in his living room, TV on low, half asleep in his chair. Then, a loud pop cut through the quiet. He reached for the remote and muted the sound. A beat passed. Then came 3 quick gunshots, sharp and unmistakable. He figured someone was probably night hunting, not unusual out there, but something tugged at him, a feeling he couldn't shake. So he grabbed his keys and headed out to check. He drove his truck down the length of Nursery Road, passing a parked car just barely off the tree line, its silhouette easy to miss in the dark. Nothing looked off, no movement, no lights, just trees and shadows. So after a slow loop, he turned around, went home, turned the TV back on, and went to bed, not realizing he had just driven past a murder scene. At 3:30 in the morning, something woke him again. Another loud bang, but this one was different. He didn't hesitate. Back in the truck, headlights cutting through fog, he retraced the same path. But this time, he didn't have to look far. Down a narrow tractor trail about 75 feet from the road, the sedan he had seen earlier was now engulfed in flames. Fire shot more than 15 feet into the air, lighting up the trees around it. The car was fully ablaze, and there were no other cars. No signs of movement, just heat, fire, and an eerie, unnatural silence. He hit the brakes, spun the truck around, and called 911. The local fire crew arrived minutes later, and after they knocked down most of the flames, they opened the trunk, and what they found inside stopped everything. A human body, burned and curled in on itself from the heat. The car's license plate was melted, but not gone. It was still legible, just enough to trace it back. The car belonged to 21-year-old Kandee Martin, a young woman reported missing just hours earlier. The name hit hard, and reality hit even harder. The fire was no accident. That much became clear when the arson investigator walked through what was left of the scene. But it was the autopsy that confirmed what police already feared. Kandee hadn't died in the flames. She had been shot twice, once in the torso and once in the head. No bullets were recovered from the body, but back on Nursery Road, officers found 6 .380 shell casings scattered near a dark pool of blood. And in that blood, they also recovered strands of hair and the back of an earring. Small things, easy to miss, but they told a story. But the trail didn't stop at the road. Just beyond it, through pine straw and underbrush, investigators followed a trail of blood into the woods. About 30 feet in, they found a single black dress shoe, more blood, and crushed branches. DNA tests later confirmed it all came from Kandee. Whatever happened that night, it hadn't ended quickly, and it hadn't ended there. The day before she was found, 20-year-old Marion Bowman was riding around town with his sister Yolanda and their cousin Katrina. As they drove through downtown Branchville, he spotted Kandee in her car, talking to a man through her window. From the back seat, Marion told Yolanda to pull over. Kandee was his childhood friend, casual hookup partner, and someone he occasionally sold crack to. And according to him, she owed him money. He rolled down the window and tried to get her attention, but Kandee told him to wait, as she was in the middle of a conversation. And that was all it took. Marion snapped. He cursed at her loud enough for people nearby to hear, and in front of 3 witnesses, he said, "I'm gonna kill that bitch tonight." By 7:30 that evening, Kandee drove over to a house where Marion and his cousin, James Gadson, had been drinking. She was driving the two of them back to a party in her small blue Ford Escort when Marion told her to take a detour, head out to Nursery Road. It was already dark when they got there. Marion told her to shut off the headlights, and Kandee stayed in the car while he and James stepped out. As they walked a short distance down the road, Marion said something that made James's stomach twist. He thought Kandee was wearing a wire, and he told James he planned to kill her. A few minutes later, they walked back toward the car. Kandee got out, started walking up the road, maybe sensing something was off. Marion followed right behind her, and James trailed them both, heart pounding. Then it happened. Marion pulled a gun and fired 3 times. Kandee screamed, turned, and ran toward James, desperate. But then she stopped, turned back to face Marion, and begged. Her voice cracked as she pleaded, "Please, don't shoot me no more. I have a baby to take care of." But he didn't care. He raised the gun again and fired 2 more times. Kandee dropped to the ground, taking one last breath. She was gone. James jumped back into the car, terrified, while Marion grabbed Kandee by the ankles and dragged her into the woods. When he came back out, he climbed into the driver's seat of her car and laughed. "I shot that bitch in the head," he said. "Heard her skull hit the ground." On the way back to town, the threat came sharp and clear. If James ever opened his mouth, he would blow his brains out. And what happened next wasn't panic. It was calculated. Marion drove Kandee's car around like it was his. First, he tried to sell it outside a local club, but no one took it. So he kept driving, picking people up, acting like it was just another night. At around 3 a.m., Marion showed up at Travis Felder's house. He asked for a ride, and Travis followed him back out to Nursery Road, watching as Marion pulled over, stepped into the dark woods, and vanished into the trees. When Marion came back, he was dragging a body, Kandee's, by the feet. He popped the trunk and threw her in. And the light from the trunk was just enough for Travis to see her face. "You didn't think I'd do it, did you?" Marion said. Then he added, "I killed Kandee Martin." Then, without hesitation, he lit a fire and threw it into the car. The vehicle went up fast, flames tearing through the night sky. After that, Travis drove him back to Branchville, and they went home like nothing had happened. But by morning, it was over. Police arrested Marion and found Kandee's wristwatch in his pants pocket, and hours later, he was officially charged with killing Kandee Martin and setting her car on fire. He was offered a plea deal for a life sentence, but went to trial because he said he was not guilty. According to Marion, Kandee gave him her wristwatch in exchange for drugs, the same watch that linked Marion to the crime, arguing he had taken it after killing her. He also said that Kandee often bought crack from him, sometimes in turn for sex. Marion was married at the time, but he said he and Kandee were having an affair, which explained why a forensic examination found his DNA on a vaginal swab. But at trial, the case was strong. Witnesses took the stand. The physical evidence lined up with the story he had already told. And every thread pointed back to one man, Marion Bowman. On May 24, 2002, the jury didn't need long. After just 3 hours, they found him guilty of murder. He was sentenced to death for the murder and got 10 years for arson. But what followed was 2 decades of legal battles. His attorneys tried everything they had. They painted a picture of a boy raised in chaos. They said he grew up in a broken home, that he started drinking at 10, and that he dealt drugs by 14. They claimed that the trial was unfair, that key evidence had been hidden, and that race played a role. Over those 22 years on death row, Marion built a different image, one his lawyers called a gentle giant. He stayed in touch with his wife, Dorothy May, spoke often to the daughter born 6 months after his arrest, and even watched his granddaughter grow up through letters, calls, and the glass of the visitation room. But none of it mattered. Every appeal failed, at the state level, the federal level, and finally, the U.S. Supreme Court. Marion remained on death row. In June 2002, a month after Marion was sentenced to death, James Gadson stood before a judge of his own. Instead of a murder charge, he took a deal, pleading guilty to accessory after the fact and failing to report the crime. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison, but he didn't serve even half. James walked out on parole in under 5 years, but his freedom didn't last long. A violation sent him straight back behind bars, where he stayed for nearly another 5 years. Travis Felder struck his own deal, and he managed to avoid prison time entirely. Instead of facing third-degree arson and accessory to murder, he pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the arson, and he was sentenced to 3 years of probation. He walked out of court with no time to serve, just a warning and a record. On January 3, 2025, after spending over 22 years on death row, Marion's execution was officially scheduled. He was given a choice: firing squad, electric chair, or lethal injection, and on January 17th, he chose lethal injection. On January 31, 2025, Marion Bowman Jr. walked into his final day. For his last meal, he requested a feast: fried shrimp, oysters, fish, chicken wings, chicken tenders, onion rings, banana pudding, German chocolate cake, pineapple juice, and cranberry juice. Just a day earlier, his legal team released a 58-page collection of poems he'd written on death row. He called it My Thoughts, a final attempt to leave something behind. Strapped to the gurney, Marion didn't speak. Instead, his lawyers read his final statement aloud. In it, he maintained his innocence. "I did not kill Kandee Martin. I'm innocent of the crimes I'm here to die for." He added, "I know that Kandee's family is in pain. They are justifiably angry. If my death brings them some relief and ability to focus on the good times and funny stories, then I guess it will have served a purpose. I hope they find peace." If you want to read the full statement, I suggest you pause the video here. Once the attorney finished reading, Marion's breath became heavy, and he puffed his lips as he exhaled. In less than a minute, those breaths ceased. 20 minutes later, a doctor with a stethoscope listened to his chest and placed a hand on his neck. She lightly patted him as she finished. He didn't react. He was pronounced dead at 6:27 p.m. Marion Bowman Jr. was 44 years old.